Goodness gracious. Okay. Well, at least you're not old. Yeah. I'm 53 and I feel really old.
Oh.
Yeah. But at least I'm not what? You said you're 27, you feel old?
Now I get it. I'm not old. But at the time I was like, I'm so old.
Yeah, well, yeah. You have your reasons. Okay, so we took a little break. Yeah. It's, hot and we're talking about some kind of intense things. And I was saying that my friend here is just like so many levels above me. I'm having trouble keeping up, frankly, which is lovely. Actually, I feel really exhilarated when I meet people who are so smart and so active and, you're really on the leading edge. I feel like, I just feel just really jazzed up, yeah, I feel like I'm really learning a lot from you. So we talked a little bit and you mentioned something about Trump and how that expanded who was involved in sort of maybe leftist spaces or radical spaces. So could you talk a little bit about that?
One of the biggest things that I really actually thought was powerful about Trump coming in, one was the collective fact there were so many people that were like, what just happened?
Right.
And I remember...
Right, because he was so bad.
He was so bad.
Yeah.
It was like, how did you keep on winning?
And so blatantly bad.
Blatantly.
Yeah.
And the stuff he was saying, it was like, we know people say we may hear this, but can you actually do that?
Right.
And he would constantly do it.
He's been used to doing that his whole life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Right. So I don't think that some of us had seen something quite to that level just yet.
Right. So crass too.
So crass. Yeah. So one of the things that I really thought was powerful about Trump coming in was the response of many sorts of people being involved on many different levels.
Even liberals.
Yes. For real.
Who usually don't do much.
They got off their freaking butts.
Yeah, right.
It was amazing.
Even the pink hat thing or whatever.
Yes.
Whatever you can do it.
For real. I knew like Hillary supporters, like one was from like a reservation, I think, in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And he moved all the way to New York after campaigning for her on foot.
Wow. Wow.
And he moved there to stop Trump.
Oh, wow.
So to start being like
interesting.
Yeah. It was like the things people were compelled to do were so beautiful for the fact that they, one, didn't like what he was talking about, and two, finally got off their butts for somebody other than themselves.
Right. Or, maybe it eroded their confidence in the system we have as well.
It did.
Voting. Because if you could vote somebody like this into office, like, how is our system valuable? Yeah.
Exactly, because it was even contentious on how did he even win?
Yeah. Right. It seems like the last few elections have really been like that too. Like
exactly.
Since I've been an adult, actually, they've all been kind of weird.
And it's wild, actually, if you look in U.S. history, because it's not the first time. And the Electoral College is bullshit.
Yeah, it's bullshit too. I mean, it's layer upon layer of it. Like,
it really is.
And do our representatives really represent people?
Do they?
Yeah. I mean, in Alaska, we have an Alaska Native woman who you'd think would, be representative of Alaska, but then she's totally behind like drilling in Anwar and in the Willow Project and supporting more mining, except the only place that she doesn't is Bristol Bay, but everywhere else is open, free, open game. And she's very centrist, like she talks that kind of language and working with Republicans and, it's like,
It's like if the center keeps on moving here, where is the center?
There's no
at the end
center.
Of the day?
I mean, the center, people describe the center as between the Democrats and Republicans, but that's
like
right. That's right wing. Yeah, that's right wing. So
because now, and especially with Trump coming in, people saw there was an actual fascist in power.
Right.
And I know that a lot of people were like, "Oh, can we actually say that?"
Yeah,
yes. We can.
Right.
This was like a theocratic fascist. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
So like, because we actually put that out there, and at the time I was working with this group called Refuse Fascism. So like, we had big no signs and all this kind of thing. But it was cool to see people like Margaret Cho and other people sign on to the petition,
So celebrities and whatnot.
Yeah, it was like, okay, Vic Mensa.
Great.
Because I've been following him since college, and I've loved how he's progressed.
Okay.
You know?
I don't know him, actually. I don't keep up with popular culture that much.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Some of these, like, young rappers have actually done a lot better than when they first came out.
Okay, great.
And he's one of them.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I know Margaret Cho because she's always, like, around in the queer community and spaces and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Michael Shannon. I was like, okay.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great, wonderful.
But anyway,
Yeah.
just even the normal people.
Yeah.
Like, one thing that I loved about COVID in this, even
You
though...
love something about COVID.
I know,
Yeah.
I did.
Okay, all right.
Everybody was off fucking work. Okay, sorry.
No, I totally get you. I hear you. It allowed people to reevaluate their lives
Yes.
and what they value.
Yes.
Like, and what was interesting too was some of the articles that talked about like how people were irritated with their children or something like that. It's like, wait a second, you have this blessed time when you could spend with your children. You know,
For
enjoy
real.
that. You know.
For real. Yeah. Or the people that realize, oh, we actually have to raise our children. We just can't send them to school to be raised.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so that's interesting. Also, too, during COVID, I did notice that a lot of trans women in this project actually said that are new to physically transitioning that was the time that they had enough time in their lives to think about what they really wanted to do.
Yes.
You know, how they wanted to live and to just, you know, come out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but to live the life that they wanted to live.
No, you're so right.
Yeah.
It feels like even when me and George, one of the other co-founders of the Transmasculine Alliance here, when we were talking about forming the group, you know, it felt like we were trying to embrace how do we bring in almost at least three different waves of LGBT people. You could even argue four.
You're talking generationally?
Yeah, generationally. Okay. There were the old heads, you know, or I'm calling them old heads, like they're gang members.
Whatever you want. You say whatever you want.
But they were kind of like the old heads, you know, the older trans guys who were like, you know, if you transition, you're a man, you know, you're trying to live life
very
and
binary.
Just, you know, get in there, you know. And
well, at the time too, they whether that was their identity or not, to access services, they had to be that way.
Exactly. You know, and frankly, if you don't have certain access and the only way to get it is by conforming, you will do what you need to do to get it done. Yeah,
that's right.
So I have no beef with that. You know, I get it.
Unfortunately, some of them try to impose that on other people.
They did.
Yeah.
They did. You know, and that was a part of the whole thing. And then there was a whole nother wave that came out a little bit later. I feel like around my age group, the Tumblr age group, where it just felt like pronouns exploded. And it was just like...
Tumblr age group. Wait, so how old are you? What
27.
27. Okay, and then I'm 53. Would you say I'm like the old head, or
I would say that you were part of the old head group.
I would say I'm on the edge of that because when I was coming out, genderqueer was actually a thing, and it was new.
See, that's why I was like, there might be four of them. But keep on going.
Yeah. And that was in the late 90s. So I'd say that guys who were earlier than me, they were more maybe binary and stuff. Actually, I know some trans guys from that time, and we all called ourselves transsexuals.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Transgender was new language. That was new language at the time. Yeah. So anyway, that's just what I have to say about that. Yeah, I have more to say, but anyway.
No, I'm glad that can actually be something that we talk about now these days and getting into it. Because even I have some ideas that, you know, not all trans people agree with. Yeah. You know?
And I feel like non-binary is another thing.
It is.
Because people didn't want to be called genderqueer because it was connected with queerness. And maybe, you know, people are coming from a different point of view. They didn't come up with the queer community. Yeah. There's just a lot of paths.
And when I say the Tumblr generation, I think it also includes kind of this suburban inclusion of people getting into this. So it wasn't
gaming communities as well.
Gaming communities, online communities. So it's not like to access this culture you had to be in the city. Right. You can be in your little isolated town or whatever and do what you want to do.
I think in some ways, some people, I mean, this is a weird word to use, but kind of fetishize like this sort of pain and struggle that we need to go through or something. And I don't know. I kind of want to, I understand the bitterness of that. Like, oh, I went through so much. So why can't other people do that? Or, like
it's like if you went through the fire, why do you want anybody else to go through the fire?
Right, exactly. No, they think of it as, I think, a test or something. Like, you got to prove yourself. Like, you have to go through the gate of fire. I don't know.
You got to go through the gauntlet to get what you want.
No. And that's part of that, like, that sort of interpersonal violence thing that, and the language of violence that sometimes comes in. Like, violence can be a tool, like you were saying, against state oppression. That's the punching up.
Yeah.
Let's do plenty of that. But the punching down, or, with our peers and stuff, I don't think that's really revolutionary.
No, it's not.
Yeah. It's certainly not bringing up communities.
In fact, it's counter-revolutionary.
Yeah, exactly.
You're actually being weirdly tools of what's going on.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot. And what do you think about this? I've seen people on the right work together way more sometimes than I've seen people on the left.
Absolutely.
Even though community and unity and all these words and concepts are kind of more on the leftist side of things, whereas individuality is more on the right.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
I think partly... Oh, I wish I knew this better now.
It's a can of worms.
It is. It's a whole can of worms, because I think that there is a difference between individuality and individualism.
Okay.
And this culture promotes individualism.
Okay.
This idea, this notion that you're autonomous. Does it actually work out? Not most of the time. No. But it's this idea.
Okay.
Whereas, like, a lot of the stuff that you may see more on left type things, whatever, actually do promote, some individual growing. But it's in the larger context of, first, let's take care of everybody. Then let's take care of us within that everybody.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
But that's
a heavy load.
Yeah. And it's a different way of coming at it.
Yeah.
It's a whole lot easier to come from yourself than to think about somebody else and you coming up through something.
Right.
And I think that, like, the right and all these different people have realized that if they don't band together, they will not get what they want, So it's kind of like when white people were established. They realized if we keep on hating on all these Irish, Italians, Polish people, we can't outnumber all these slaves. So we got to do something to kind of bolster our number.
Right.
So it's much better for them to actually help each other out and figure out how to get that done.
Yeah, I've seen them definitely work together, and maybe the stakes are just different because they really don't want to change stuff.
No,
they just want to, maybe they want to change, but they want to move back a little bit. Growth requires, a lot more work. So it's almost like they can, smooth over some of those differences, where on the left, smoothing over differences can mean you're disrespecting somebody's identity or a lot of other really bad things.
Exactly. Yeah. Or saying, maybe we should focus on this before that other thing, which some people think is, but I'm like, sometimes you have to wait until you can actually do something else.
Yeah, that is a very contentious thing. Because sometimes actually that sort of thing that you're talking about can be used to just not actually deal with the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Let's deal with the bigger stuff first. Well... No, the smallest stuff actually is how you get there.
Exactly. Yeah. And it needs to be constantly within the language, what we're doing, all this kind of thing.
Right.
So even with some of the abortion rights stuff right now, I do actually think it's very important that people bring out what's happening in particular to women or people perceived as women without deleting that language. Because there's actually a whole list of things that people will do to women in particular that affect everybody.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we need to get rid of this conversation about what about people with different bodies who want to do this? What about different parenting things?
It's like an also. It's an and.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So we're not forgetting you, but we have to do something about femicide and all this kind of thing.
Right. Right.
So, but I don't think that people realize that while we're bickering, and interfighting, and there's a lot of sectarianism, as people will call it, these different groups being like, this is us, we don't work together. This other side is constantly building up.
Oh, yeah.
They don't have to tear down.
Yeah, they don't care.
No, they can use every bit of this system. Like, people don't realize that when the Nazis came into power and all that, the economy actually grew much stronger.
Sure.
You know, so there's no beef with capitalism. You know?
Yeah.
And
right. Yeah, whenever we get into a skirmish, yeah.
Exactly.
You know, drilling in the Arctic. Yeah, but it's ruining the world. So what?
Exactly. No beef because, hey, you got that profit, you know? So it was really weird to see all these religious people supporting this overtly sexual, not religious person. I didn't really think Trump was very religious before he ran for government.
And he still is not. I mean, that Bible was a prop. It was
exactly.
He was just like,
yeah, here we go. You know. Yeah. So, but they're tearing down those big differences to make something happen.
Right. Right.
You know.
Yeah, it's almost like they're a lot more focused on that goal. You know, that eventual goal. And I wonder what that is. Maybe it's a hope thing. Is there like a lack of hope on the left or something? Like, I don't know. What is it?
I don't...
Because our country is very rightist. Yeah. You
know. I'm not sure exactly. I think that even in academia, there's a lot of contention too of this whole thing about subjectivity and is my reality part of your reality, you know, all that kind of thing. Yeah. When I'm more of the school of there's an objective reality. Everybody's dealing with the same world. You know, we may have different things that we're coming to it from or different ideas that influence that reality. So they're part of it, but we're all dealing on the same playing field, you know?
I feel for you if you're going to go into academia.
Yeah, I know. For real. I'm in ethics right now and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to come across that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, literally every discussion is going to be like that.
For real. Yeah. And even when I went into all that, I wanted to do political science at first because I thought, ooh, it's going to be like a science. It's not. No. It's just like the U.S. is number one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Liberalism.
Yeah, so. And I hated that.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's take a break again.
Yeah, no problem.
Goodness gracious. We're just talking about so much. Yeah, let's turn this off. Goodness gracious. Okay, we needed to take a break because this old man is just fizzing out. So during the break, we were trying to map this out a little bit, and you were mentioning the reason for bringing together basically a transmasculine group. Mm-hmm. And part of that is social, but there's other reasons for that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excuse me. So, yeah, a big aspect of it is social. You know, I think that even when I was talking with other, just particularly like people of color, LGBT people, we were talking about a lot of the times that we actually come together. It's very much trauma informed, support groups type things, but it's not social. Mm-hmm. So it's more like, how do we get over this pain that we've been through? Right. You know, and there's actually...
How do we keep living?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know, but sometimes you need to have that, how do we keep living in a more like, well, we've got some problems. We're not going to sort them all out here. But we're actually going to keep on going. Yeah. We're going to try to build community and be there for each other. Right. You know, and then those other things we'll work with along the way. Mm-hmm. You know, but
yeah, that's actually the most that I think that's the most important part. Mm-hmm. Like how you're doing activism. Yes, is you're bringing everybody up. You're bringing people together because otherwise, who are you doing it for? You're just doing your own thing, and once again, it's egoistic.
It is
right.
It's egoistic, and I actually think that I felt like I would meet people like this. There's certain people that may call themselves activists or whatever and do this, but they've actually got, not only do they have skin in the game, whatever, but they actually want to commodify it. It's their brand.
Oh, yeah.
That problem.
Well, some people get actually literally paid for it.
Yes, they do.
That's a whole different discussion.
Different one.
But they do get paid for it.
Yeah.
And then there's people who do it for kind of social credit.
Yes.
You know.
Cultural collateral.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Or, you know, like they want their not only social credit, that would be like people around you, but also the online presence.
Yes. The prestige in the community. Yeah. You know, that's the person they all look up to. That's the person we go to, our point person, whatever. There's a lot within it.
Do we really want to have leaders like that either?
No.
I don't really want leaders.
No, because...
I mean, just as a concept.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that I'd like to get to a point where we don't.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we need decision making to happen.
Yeah, there's that. But what we do, I feel like, is, and I've had this as experience as well as an activist, and maybe you have as well. If you're somebody who has a strong personality, who does things, and maybe they're kind of effective, suddenly people are kind of looking to you, and maybe not looking to themselves.
That's why I feel like there has to be that step of constant interrogation and bringing in everybody at whatever level it is into that interrogation process. You know, so even if they met you yesterday or the people who've been with you for many years, if we have a certain way of doing, or if we have certain principles we're trying to uphold and keep, whatever, are we actually meeting that with these new things, or are we just following this because it sounds cool?
Or is an organization that's established, that's maybe doing good work.
Yeah.
If somebody comes in that's new, that has different ideas, maybe listen to that.
Yes.
You know, maybe they have something else to offer. You know? But I've seen so much gatekeeping, you know, like, oh, seriously, you haven't been in this community, you just don't know, or you're too young.
Yes.
Goodness gracious. When I was younger, people were like, oh, you're just so young. You just don't know yet, you know.
Or the other thing that, it's funny, older people will bring up, and frankly, very new people will bring this up, but they'll be like, don't trust people over 30. That used to be something.
That's still a thing? Or?
Yes.
That's still a thing, okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of a 60s thing or something.
It is.
But...
It's a 60s thing from like anti-war movement stuff. Or free speech movement.
Sure,
that's what I mean.
Right.
But it's still down here.
They still have it. Okay.
When I was in Texas, one of the groups that I also met, when I first saw Black Lives Matter, because I dropped out after Sandra Bland died, because she died in front of my campus. Oh. And I actually thought at that time, I was like, oh, she just needs to keep her mouth shut, you know, and deal with it later. And somebody had to be like, no, that is not right. Think about this in a different light. And I was like, oh, you know. So I had very backwards views.
Somebody literally kind of changed your life.
Oh, absolutely.
Like. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I mean, when you said that, I had such sympathy from you, like from, you know, being a white person, I'm empathize with that, but sympathize with, of survival techniques.
Exactly.
Right. And it's a terrible survival technique.
It is.
But it's something that people have used, you know.
It is.
Not speaking up. Yeah.
But it's one of those things of, like, are you just trying to survive, or are you going to lift your sights? Right. Can we actually do better? Because at that point, I didn't really think you could do better, you know?
Right.
So...
and this country hasn't.
No.
Yeah.
No. And our rights aren't linear.
No. Yeah?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
We have to constantly fight, bring them up for them even to be held as a standard. Okay. And frankly, even if it is codified into their laws, like, say, the right to vote, they can take it away and not mention it.
Right.
You know?
Right. Like you were talking about the unofficial curfews and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then they're so blatant, too. Like, in Tennessee... a senator or somebody in the legislature there brought up bringing back lynching.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think I would ever hear anybody support that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Or finally getting rid of slave out of state constitutions. It's kind of like that should have been already eliminated. But frankly, there is still institutionalized slavery that does exist. But it's mainly... So
in state constitutions, it's legal to have slavery?
They still have slave within the terms of the context.
Okay.
And slavery is okay for prisoners.
Okay, yeah,
so
right.
That's where it gets kind of murky because they've done something wrong and their autonomy has been, kind of relinquished as a result. So... there is still this kind of indentured, kind of slavery aspect within it. Right.
I noticed when I went to Louisiana once, I took the train down there, and the train stopped, it doesn't go on the regular route.
No, it doesn't.
Like the roads and stuff, so you see different things.
Yeah.
And we went by like some, it was all black men working out there.
Field.
Yeah, out there in the sun. We just had a ding on my computer.
Power saver.
Oh, it must be not plugged in. Let me do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Talk about an intense thing and suddenly have to stop the interview because actually there was a small technical difficulty. My joke is that my project is produced or directed by technical difficulties.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway, yeah, I know. It's produced from small potatoes, grown from small potatoes. Anyway, yeah, so I was taking a train. It was just Amtrak. You know, they used to have this deal where you gave them a certain amount of money and you could just take trains all over the place.
Yes.
So I did that and I liked it. I love trains. But yeah, going through Louisiana was kind of a thing because there were like work gangs and I had never seen that before. And it was all African-American men. And it just, I felt, and I could feel it now, like it felt like a chill, like what the hell is going on in this state? You know, it was like out of that movie, Cool Hand Luke. It was like that, but it was all African American men. Yeah.
So that's why, you know, we have to continue to bring this kind of stuff up.
Yeah.
And even if your sights are on something far greater than this society that we have right now, you still have to kind of fight for those minimal securities to our life.
Yeah. I mean, there's revolutionary change and there's incremental change. There's no reason why you don't have where you can't do both of them at the same time. You know, if you can get closer, why not? You know.
Yeah.
The problem is compromise, of course.
It is.
Right.
And it takes a lot to actually do something that you may have not really been wanting to do or think is maybe not even in your lexicon to be like, this is a time where we need to do something that's not what we usually do.
Okay.
So,
like what in particular?
I actually did. It may sound odd, but it was funny. Or it was needed, but it was interesting because when Biden came into power or office, I keep on saying came into power, but
well,
but when
these are regimes of some sort.
Exactly. So when Biden came in,
the neoliberal regime. Anyway.
Yes. But he was not Trump. That was
he was not Trump,
thing.
But yeah.
So many problems, but he was not Trump.
He was not Trump. Yeah.
So we used every single tool we could think of to try to make sure that Trump did not get in again.
Right.
You know? So it was funny because I met all these different revolutionaries, different other people, you know, actually going out there casting their ballot to go vote or working to get other people to do that. Right. To use every single mechanism. Yeah. So we were in the streets, we were calling up people, writing letters, and voting.
I know people who I would call radical, who, you know, kind of held their nose, but they did it.
Yeah.
You know, they knew that, you know, this is not the kind of world that they want to be, you know, voting for somebody who's a neoliberal, who's not, you know, going to make hardly any progressive change, but, you know, that's what you do. They call it diversity of tactics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just got to look at it, you know, and think of what is the actual greater evil at this point.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
So
I've had this mantra kind of recently. I mean, I'm kind of squishy. I'm not, you know, whatever. But I kind of want to do just what helps. You know, and that I feel like that's responsive to what's going on in the world. I don't want to have I want to have less rigid ideas about some things. I do want to have good boundaries, but I want to do what helps. So I don't know.
I like that.
Think about it.
it's more flexible.
Yeah, flexible.
You know,
I want to be flexible.
And even though I feel like even in my head, I'm very much trained in a certain way of thinking, in a certain way of like approaching the world.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not as versed with the immediate ways that they're doing it now. Yeah. You know, so I feel kind of lost on that.
What do you think is your background? And you're talking very specifically, but not really naming it. What do you think is your philosophy then?
My philosophy is coming from revolutionary communism. Okay. And the new communism of Avakian. So that is my background. Okay. So I'll
have to look that up because I have no idea.
Yeah, a lot of people on the left, whatever, they don't like it. They say it's cultish, whatever. But frankly, most of them have not read it either. Okay. So it's one of those things where it's like you can't just listen to people. Yes. You have to actually see it for yourself.
Sure.
So.
And then you're clashing with some other people who have similar ideas but not exactly that background. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And what is that clash?
There's a ton of clashes.
Okay, well.
So there's clashes from like just people taking in Marx. There's people clashing from Marx and Lenin, Marx, Lenin, Mao. Then there's clashes from people that think that Cuba was a communist country. Was not.
Okay.
Think clashes from people that think that China is still socialist, and it's not. Russia is still social. So there's little striations all along the way.
Well, it sounds like you have the capacity to be like an educator in that too. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like that's a role that you take in some communities, or?
That is actually a contentious subject, even amongst frankly, any minority group.
Yeah.
Is who gets to educate people who don't know, and is it your responsibility to do that to other people?
Okay.
And I'm of the school of, I'd rather just, if you're open and honest to learning, I'd rather just tell you and be there to be a part of that educating than to let somebody else do it who has the worst intentions.
Right. And it can't be also an expectation.
No.
That you're going to somehow educate other people. Like, that's exhausting. But it just sounds like since you do have a little bit of a difference between what you believe in and that is your perspective in the world, and other people within the leftist community or the far left, I don't know how you'd say that. It seems like that would be like a really good dialogue to have.
It is.
Because if some people are ignorant about, Cuba or what's going on, then that's something to be brought out. Because I think a lot of people are ignorant.
They are.
There's a purposeful ignorance about that.
There is. Yeah. And it's confusing when somebody says, if you meet somebody and they're constantly beating up their family, let's say. Yeah. I know that's really drastic.
Yeah.
But that's what they do. And they say, I love my family all the time.
Sure.
So if you go, they say they love their family, so they must love their family. Right. But it's like, what the school of thought I came from was constantly using something called a scientific method. Okay. So kind of interrogating reality based on the whole thing of, okay, let's take the question, let's kind of observe this, let's test it against reality, and then look at the results. Okay. But kind of keeping that interrogative kind of way of looking at it. So if a country is doing this, it says this and all that, is it actually living up to those standards, or is it something else? Okay. Can
you give a specific example that people might know?
Yeah, I guess this is a specific example. Yeah. Oh, I'm trying to think exactly.
We could take a break again.
Yeah.
Turn on the fan for a second. Let's do that. Okay, we're running a little bit out of time, so we're having to kind of think about how to do this. And I feel so sad because I feel like we're just starting this conversation. Yeah, it's terrible. So I was asking you about a kind of example that people might know about that maybe it's what we think we know about it isn't the reality of it.
Yeah.
So, what do you think?
Take for instance, if you look at China and how it's operated after Mao. Yeah. So if you take a lot of the ways that their policies have been enacted around the world, you'll notice that they're acting a lot like an imperialist country. Oh yeah. As well as
very realist.
Very. Totally. That is not the same things that, under if you were looking at the definitions of what socialism would do, they would be enabling. Yeah. During Mao's time, they actually helped or tried to fund a lot of anti-colonial efforts, whereas China now is trying to reclaim different islands. It's trying to take a lot of property.
Taiwan, right. Yeah. They're even building islands.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we have daily skirmishes with them.
Exactly. Yeah. Even in the way that they do their language and everything about how they act towards people is a complete reverse of during that time. And
so it seems like internationalism has gone towards nationalism then.
It already had problems with nationalism because Mao had problems with nationalism. And it's hard. You're trying to keep your country that's supposed to be this bastion of things that could be better, but you still have to protect it while also trying to help other people to be like you. So it's like they took the weakness and made that the main thing. Okay. So now they're acting like, kind of US 2.0, but Chinese
basically. Edition. Yeah, soon they're going to probably overtake us too. I mean, realistically, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, so even just that imperialism point, but also their economy. Yeah. It's state-owned, but it's still capitalist. It's not.
Yes, they are robust capitalists.
Exactly. Woo. The way they've come into Africa and done some things,
yeah.
even the way that they've come into different Asian countries.
I lived in Zambia for a little while when I was a teenager, and America wasn't so in there. It was definitely China. Yeah. Even those the heavy black bicycles that you would see in the cities in China, those were in Africa and where I was at. Yeah, totally.
So it's interesting because even amongst HBCUs in this country, a lot of them have Confucius Institutes.
Interesting.
So I don't know. So they realize that there's a weakness there when it comes to the U.S. and how they deal with black people. They had a direct school from China that was teaching Mandarin and stuff. Like, I really liked learning Mandarin when I was in PV. Okay. And they had a Confucius Institute.
How were you at it?
I was very good.
Oh.
I was failing literally everything, but I had 100.
It's a very, it's tonal. So I think of it as like singing a language.
Yes, it's an active language.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have very many tenses. Yeah. And I just loved it.
Okay.
I loved it.
Awesome.
I used to be the only person in the Chinese singing group.
Okay. So why do they have these Confucius Institutes? So it's not philosophy like about Confucianism. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it was really funny that they called themselves that. I think it was because it's a recognizably China thing.
Sure.
But I think that they were doing it because they wanted to have this kind of more economic pull with like black entrepreneurs and intellectuals that would come up, so that they could bolster kind of like how China is viewed amongst other, economic, I guess, or other countries looking at the economy of China and kind of seeing them less as like a second world country, but more as like a first world country. So
yeah, that shift is definitely happening now.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, it is.
It is.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a very good example. Yeah. So, is it socialist? Is it communalist? Is it
exactly?
Is there a lot of mutual aid going on there?
No. So it's a socially owned, but definitely imperialist country, and it's capitalist.
Yeah. Would you say it's also authoritarian, possibly, or?
I would say that there's definitely some huge elements of that, just like this country is leaning towards more theocratic type stuff at the moment. Right. Yeah. But it's not it's
pretty blatant.
It's very blatant.
Yeah.
But it's not a true theocratic nation like a lot of Yemen, Kuwait, all that kind of thing.
Led by religious leaders.
Yes.
Yeah. So speaking of community and that sort of thing, and looking at, we were talking about like people having different interests and different points of view in communities, and we were mentioning that bringing together a community can be difficult.
Yes.
And why did you feel compelled, beyond, I guess, the social aspects, bringing people together and having fun and supporting, of having like a transmasculine group, I guess? Yeah.
I felt, of course, I needed friends, but anyway.
Yeah. We all need friends. I mean, why have a revolution if you're not going to have some fun in there?
Real, really. That is a lame ass revolution.
I mean, everybody's sad, depressed. I mean, no.
Yeah, that's not it.
No.
No. But the main reason I thought that like we needed this was because one, unlike kind of like black people and stuff, we have kind of like a culture that's been built out of degradation.
Sure.
So it's a distinct, almost like ethnicity type deal.
Okay.
Of how black has risen up out of slave trade and everything.
Right.
So with LGBT and all that kind of thing, and trans people in particular, we're all over the place.
Right.
We have many different backgrounds and all
often
that kind of thing.
Isolated too. Yeah.
Exactly. Especially, I feel like those. Actually, no, all of them. I was gonna say some of the earlier, later waves, whatever. But frankly, they were all isolated.
All of them.
You know.
Yep.
So there's a very isolating aspect of it, especially when people are going, in order to be myself, does that mean that I have to reject hanging out with the people who are also transitioning or whatever once I get to a certain stage, so that I don't out myself. And that's a particular interest in the South.
Right.
Going
stealth.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Have you ever had that somebody do that with you?
Like leave because I was at a certain stage.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can feel it.
Yeah.
You know, and it's sad, but you know, I can't entirely fault them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that sometimes people feel that too with passing. You know, like if you can get a leg up, it's kind of sad that you have to reject the rest of us, but
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
I get it.
It's one of those kind of bad coping strategies, or
it is
totally, yeah,
it is. But I also understand that some people's goals in their whole transition process is that they truly want to just be. They were just a man in the wrong body,
right.
You know, so
yeah, some people don't even identify as trans.
No,
not at all.
No, yeah. So if they've gotten to that point where they, that was their goal, you know.
Yeah.
But that is a part of being trans, you know.
Yeah. So, and so you're gathering together this group. I'm going to turn my phone off. And we were talking about kind of the difference between trans feminine influence versus trans masculine influence in our greater community. So I was wondering if you could elucidate that a bit.
Yeah, there's some deep norms within like kind of how we're enculturated into this society, with it being so binary. So when you have women coming up in this society, you know, people born female that usually get sucked into there, like we're taught to be more like, is the word demure?
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
Yeah, kind of like, you know,
stand back.
Stand
let
back.
Other people do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know. So, and also to be more quiet, let other people take their turn first, you know, to really kind of put yourself last, you know, and
does that kind of slightly come out of the culture of this place as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It does. Yes, definitely. Texas. Yeah, the whole southern thing, you know, but, so you're coming from all that kind of training, and then you're also in a place where you're extremely vulnerable, trying to figure out how you will be yourself for a period of years, you know, or even your entire life, because you may never pass, you know?
Right. And for some people, that's not their goal at all.
No.
Yeah.
But it's hard.
Yeah.
Because if you will never pass, then that means that you don't get any of the privileges that come with it. You know?
Right.
And that's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Some privacy comes with passing.
A lot of it does.
Yeah, if you're more non-binary, if you're more in the middle, if you're more like obvious as a trans person, you kind of don't have any privacy ever.
No, I mean the questions. You know that you get
people, or the looks, whatever. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, you know, or even how you're treated in the bathroom when you finally do go over there. You know, will people come and confront you? Will they lecture you when you come out?
Right.
You know, all that kind of thing.
Or violence, even.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I always think about Brandon, Tina, you know?
Right. Yeah.
That is not an untrue thing that happens to people, you know? So the necessity, I feel like, of having kind of like an AFAB space, you know, of people being...
What does AFAB mean?
AFAB means assigned female at birth.
Okay.
So I'd actually say that, you know, if somebody was intersex and they happened to be in part of that whole culture, they were assigned female at birth.
Yeah.
You know? So
so both of us were assigned female at birth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there's a certain way that we've been brought up and a certain culture behind it. We don't really have a lot of the things of saying that we grew up as boys doing different things. So when you're in a mixed space of, say, all sorts of trans people, you know, a lot of the things that trans women have that trans guys don't get is the fact they're already kind of bold in some ways, or they already know kind of some of the aspects of what to do in order to assert themselves.
Right.
That
was the word I was thinking of, assertion. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a skill that you have to have, you know, whether you want to just be a man amongst men, or if you just want to be non-binary or whatever else along that whole thing. You have to be able to learn how to carry yourself and how to be yourself and stand up for yourself.
Right. Especially if you're an activist too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Because you will get steamrolled, or you will be in something and you'll realize why am I fighting for this? And this is not even anything I believe in.
Right.
You know, and that's not a good place.
I noticed for myself in some communities, and I don't mean to say any sort of blanket thing about trans women. This is actually specific that in Portland, Oregon, for instance, there were, when I was first coming out as, coming out. Yes. See, I'm still using that. I'm going to think about it every time now, though, since you said that. But as I was, going through therapy and then starting hormones and that sort of thing, the community was sort of dominated by trans women who they were doing some great work. They were talking to like city council and lobbying the state and doing all this stuff. And, I'm not going to take anything away from them, but they often didn't consider like other points of view of genderqueer people at the time. That's what we were calling people, or transmasculine people, FTMs, trans men. And, that causes some problems.
It does.
It does. When you think about, let's say, incarceration, where are they going to put AFAB people?
Yeah.
Versus, thinking about assigned male at birth people. I understand that there are issues there, but there's also issues on the other side of that.
Yeah.
And that was just never discussed. And I still see that online sometimes.
Yes.
From our big organizations.
Yes.
Are still pushing that sort of thing and not considering everybody in the community.
We have such a lack of, frankly, studies and research on like FTM people. Right. And it's stark, you know? And I used to hate it. Black Lives Matter is the main one I can think of, that would do this. Yeah, you keep
bringing them up.
Because they came up when I came up.
Okay.
So Black Lives Matter was starting when I was getting politically kind of open to the world.
But it sounds like you were really deep with them, and then maybe you weren't.
I was adjacent.
Okay,
so
you were adjacent.
We ran parallel on a bunch of things.
Okay.
So even the group that I was a part of was big in Ferguson.
Okay.
But Ferguson was before my time.
Okay.
But so we aligned with a lot of the things against police brutality and all that. But in the whole way of how we fight for it, we were more inclusive as to who we allowed to fight for that. Okay. If you were white, if you were whatever, if you were a migrant worker, we welcomed you in, speak about it.
Okay.
Talk about how this should not be a thing.
Okay.
And we didn't...
Because it is going to take everybody.
Everybody.
It is going to take it. Everybody.
Whereas Black Lives Matter, the biggest thing that I hated at the time and that persisted was this whole thing of only black people can speak, and only the most oppressed of the black people. And there was a disconnect between the main Black Lives Matter people like the Alicia Garzas and all them and the people on the street. Okay. Because a lot of the people on the street, it was more like male organized, and then there were some like female people, whatever, who would do things. But on top, they were like, oh, this is a black queer led thing, and that there was a huge disconnect between where the money was going and everything else, and where people who were doing our child was just killed. How do we figure out what to do?
Right.
Yeah. So I just hated the fact that you're excluding people who took time out of their lives and their day to actually fight for you and to say, you can't say anything about this and just do these little tasks. Help us, send us some money, but you have no place in our fight.
You just brought up money a few times. That's a bit controversial.
It is, especially with them.
Do you want to talk about that at all, or
just a little bit?
Okay.
I'm still trying to process it.
Yeah.
But Black Lives Matter got an insane amount of money during the whole years. There was a lot of white guilt, you know, and people were pumping in money,
and that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay to be guilty, but the way that they used it was horrible. You know, why did you buy a mansion? Why were y'all trying to have an influencer party place? Like, and then why are there's the infamous charcuterie board thing.
That must, as somebody who's kind of a radical leftist socialist, I can imagine that would be just like, what are you doing?
For real.
Because it's like completely engaging with capitalism for one thing. I mean, real estate.
Yeah. And I understand that when you have all these different groups, their end goal may not be to end capitalism, but it was so...
I thought they were socialists. Do I have that wrong?
They're prison abolitionists.
Okay.
Some of them may say that they're socialist or whatever, but even there's differences.
Okay.
Some socialists are more like Bernie. Social democratic, whatever.
Sure.
We can do some socialist aspects within capitalism.
Okay.
And then there are other socialist people that I would be more identified with.
Socialism is
it's a distinct thing that is not capitalism.
Yes, right.
There's a distinct line.
Yes.
So I'm more of the school of that's a distinct phase that's very different, but it can go this way or it can go that way.
Sure, okay.
And I'd like it to go.
Yeah. I've talked about this a few times. It's almost like we don't really have very much of a leftist movement here. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because it gets co-opted by liberals or social democrats or something. What do you think about like the DSA? Do you think they are, I mean, that's kind of a hot button topic, but are they actually socialists?
No.
Because they're working with the system that we have.
They are.
So,
I think that they like a lot of aspects of socialism, but they don't understand the fact that to have the type of socialism they want, you still need extreme exploitation of other people around the world.
Right. I mean, that's what capitalism is. That's it.
So if you want to get rid of that exploitation, you have to actually break with capitalism in a lot of ways. So by working within it, you're accepting the fact that you're still effing over people, but you're more generously spreading it amongst the people who are already doing good.
Right. And the people who are near you. And forgetting, the people in Africa and
Yemen,
Southeast
whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think it's mostly because I have a more worldwide perspective.
Okay.
I would like the planet to be better. I'd like to be caretakers of the planet, all that kind of thing, versus somebody who's just thinking about people in the U.S.
Yeah, right. Speaking of the U.S., the House just passed that bill condemning socialism. What do you think about that?
Why?
Why?
Yeah. But it's interesting. They've always had a problem with it.
Yeah, of course.
Soon as it came out.
But it was the most laughably written bill I've ever seen, probably. I mean, it was absolutely ridiculous.
I'm going to have to look more into it because I heard it and I was just like, this is so...
Yo, you should read it. It's just like...
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's probably just make you mad. It's like a kindergarten's version of, what socialism is.
Oh, I gotta read it because I'd like to know how they might apply it too.
Yeah.
Because, I don't think that we're that far from running into a Red Scare again.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think we're definitely there. I mean, yeah. It's interesting, too, because, I mean... Like I said earlier, it feels like the left is not very robust.
No.
Right? It's very small. There's not a lot of power. There's not, the ideas in it are not part of the culture very much. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's what an uphill battle that's going to be. So to have like our Congress be like, we're condemning this idea. It's a little strange. So
it is.
Yeah.
It is. And it's going to make it harder for people to talk about it and do stuff with it.
Right. Right. Yeah. Do you think that younger people really are more interested in socialism? Because I've seen some research, like from the statisticians that take polls and stuff, that younger people are actually more interested. Do you think that's true?
I think that they are more vocally interested in it. But I don't think that it maybe is more than other time periods just yet.
Okay.
Because there have been periods where it's been really big and then it dissipates. Usually there's a big war that comes up.
Okay.
But so like the 70s, really big.
Sure.
And then what happens? Gulf War and other things.
Then we got
happen.
Reagan.
Exactly.
More majority.
Yeah. And also I think around the Great Depression, it also got very big.
Yeah.
But then World War II happened.
Right.
So, people kind of get back in, they get jobs again, they start having a better standard of living.
Okay.
So I don't know. But I do think that we're in a particular period that's a little different as far as like how far things have gone and possibly the potential to do something much greater than we did in the past.
Also communication and like unofficial press or whatever
Yeah.
seems really big at the moment,
Yeah.
social media or whatever.
I know one of the things I used to follow all the time was Unicorn Riot, because they would be out there,
Sure.
running around.
Sure.
And then sometimes I would check out the Young Turks or whatever. But I'd spread around who I looked at. It was not just one thing, because
Right.
I also couldn't stand people that just looked at one thing.
Yeah.
Like, people were like, "Oh, I only listen to Democracy Now!" And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, that's definitely a particular point of view. Right, yeah. So speaking of that, what do you think about, like, the future? What would you like to see other people doing? So maybe these young people will hold on to some of those ideas, maybe hope a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Right, because older people sometimes have some experience and knowledge, and you definitely do.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to dream and you were to maybe offer some ideas about what to do, what would you like to see happen? Like worker co-ops or land trusts, for example, or something like that. Just to throw out a couple ideas.
The biggest thing that I hope is that I can leave this world better than when I came into it. Because I didn't ask to be in this kind of crappy situation.
Yeah, right.
But I would like it to be better for the next generations that come up. So that's a basic standard line.
Somebody who is Jewish that I talked to said, Moses did not see the promised land. He was not allowed. He could see it, but he was not allowed to enter it.
He wasn't.
Right. So sometimes it's beyond your life.
Exactly.
That something can happen. Right?
Yeah. And frankly, what kept me going for many years was that it felt like it was right on the cusp because of all the uprisings.
Is that where you put your heart? Okay.
Yeah, I kept on being like, well, it might happen next year. It might happen the next year,
Yeah.
But it wasn't really realizing everything that had to change in order for that to happen.
Right.
Do I think that could happen quickly? Yes, but in the matter of like 1 year, 2 years, no. But still, it could happen rapidly.
Yeah, I think that people don't realize when people think of activists, they don't think of, like, there's a lot of heart there. Yes. There's a reason why people are so active and they put their lives into things and their safety is because they have so much heart, because they care so much.
They do.
Yeah, totally.
They really
and
do.
I can see it, and it can be devastating,
It can be very devastating. And I'm hoping that even with like this trans group and everything that we're running, that it'll bring back kind of this spirit of like being able to rely and build a community that's actually a community with each other, more so than in name, because when you start getting into some of the LGBTQ stuff, there's actually a huge amount of division. Oh yeah. And like different things going on.
Oh yeah. I call it more like communities.
Yeah, exactly.
Rather than a community. Yeah. Sometimes I make sure to emphasize that. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a broad community. We do have some things that are in common and that maybe we can work for. Yeah. But really it is communities.
It's like in biology, there's this group called the protists. And the only reason why all these protists, like microorganisms and stuff, are together is because you can't put them in any other kingdom in the eukaryote. Okay. Yeah.
Kind of like the slime molds or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
They're off by themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. So they're a group made by exclusion. And that is LGBTQ plus.
Okay. Sure. That's interesting. It's its own gatekeeper. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's funny how we take on the... Audre Lorde, of course, talked about this, taking on the tools of the oppressor.
Yes.
Totally. Yeah. We take on some of the aspects of that just to get by.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. Yep. But is that going to make anything better if we do that? I don't know. I don't think so.
Exactly.
Yep. Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit more. Just we only have a few more minutes.
I know.
I'm trying to think about that because I get lost in this. But is there any other sort of things that you would like to see maybe some young people to study or to think about, like building and that sort of thing?
I think the last thing that I'd probably bring up on that is as much as we have different community spaces and everything, branch out. Please talk to everybody and different sorts of people. Keep your mind open and always interrogate things. Is this really what it says it is?
Yeah.
And to keep that as a living process will help a lot because so many times...
Yeah, there's no endpoint to that.
There's no endpoint.
No.
It's a constant interrogating thing. And it can be really hard. Like, I'll try to keep it short, but an example such was when I was learning about the gang structure in Chicago, I had one view of how it worked. And we based a lot of the way that we dealt with things on that one view. But that wasn't actually how the gangs worked there. You know, they had a very different system than New York. They had a very different system than LA. Right. You know, and we had to actually go, whoa, this is something different, and we have to learn about it because we don't have the resources about it or knowledge base to base a lot of our actions on it, or else we're just doing harm and assuming that this is how things work. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And that's hard because you're like, we've spent years, months, all this hard work, working with people, doing different stuff, and we didn't know what we were doing. Right. You know, or we had an inkling, but it was not to the best of our ability.
Right. And then people on that side probably, or people who are in that community probably think of you as foolish. Too. Yeah. So you never have an in, really.
It's true. They may think you're foolish, or they may be heartened by the idea, but then when things start going wrong, they're like, oh shit, this never could have worked anyway.
Right. Because you can't offer the right help.
Yeah. So it almost feels like a double hit because they're like, they get back into this depressed thing of like, we really can't do anything. When it was like, look, we made a mistake, but we can still learn from this. And there were some good things that came out, but don't give up hope even when you do something wrong. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and even the concept of help is strange, isn't it? I think that should be interrogated.
It should. Yeah. And I think that when people help, I'll just add this in there.
See, you're influencing me right here, I'm telling you. Anyway.
I think that when people help, try to get inside of it. Yeah. You know, don't... One of the things I didn't like was sometimes there would be different groups that would come in and help, but they did it in a way of like, we're just providing food, we're just doing this, whatever. But it felt very kind of like, you know, here, y'all, unfortunate people, you know? So they never really got inside.
Yeah, that's an interesting word, unfortunate, too.
Yeah. It was more pity, you know, going into it. And I'm giving you something to make myself feel better about the piteous situation you're in.
Right. Yeah. I find that when people do that, I'm always having to lie to them too, because what I do actually need, what some of the help that they're getting, you know, that they're giving, like food or housing, but then, you know, I can tell that they want some control over me, which is not so good.
Exactly. There's usually some strings attached.
Oh yeah, there's. I've never been in a situation where it hasn't. In that sort of milieu, I definitely do know, and I'm gonna take that back. Actually, I do know some people who don't have strings attached, who do treat people as peers and worthy of respect. And yeah, I remember I was doing a project up in Fairbanks, and this is a big omission. I'm going to tell you, this is a big omission. I was trying my best to get seamstresses together. It was mostly seamstresses. Wow. I mean, 99%. I mean, there were a few men, but not really. Together to make masks up there and bring them out to the essential workers and that sort of thing. And I was supplying a lot of masks to a local anti-hunger organization. And I asked the executive director at some point, who's very good and very smart and very pointed in their analysis of things. And I said, is there a way that I'm thinking about a way to make these cheaper, because your guests wear them and then they throw them away immediately. And I was thinking of it as a very pragmatic, which I hate that word. Yeah. But it was pragmatic. Yeah. Practical way where I wouldn't have to use the best fabrics, and you know, there's my admission, right? Yeah. But that comes from thinking of some people as not deserving of the full help. Yeah. And that I'm assuming that they're going to just throw it away right afterwards.
It's very easy to go there.
Yeah. So, you know, that's one example from my life, but there's so many. There's so many that I can think of. And I was so glad that my friend interrogated me with that. And he was like, no, they deserve the same thing that you're giving everybody else, basically. Yeah.
No, I completely understand, because when I would work in the neighborhoods with some people, they treated people like they were monsters, you know? And it was kind of like, well, how did that happen, for one? But then, two, when you're looking at it...
Deserving of violence, too.
No, it's true.
Right.
Deserving of violence to either get them into a better place, you know, by beating them into some other role, or of just what would happen to them if they continued that lifestyle. But it was like, sometimes people would want to take away their ability to make choices and reasons for themselves.
Right.
And to help each other, you know?
Yeah.
Because they thought that they were incapable of doing so.
Right. And how is that good work? That's completely dehumanizing.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's a different type. It's patronizing.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But it's very easy to get there.
It's insidious, though.
It is.
You may not see an action happening.
Yeah.
But that stuff goes very deep.
It does. Yeah. And I think that's why that constant interrogation of, does this actually live up to what we're trying to do, is so important.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I hate to end this conversation. I am hearing some rattling of keys and doorknobs. And,
I know.
And so, yeah, I feel sad. So, yeah, I think we should probably end it there. And I think that's actually a pretty good place to end this chapter.
Yeah.
Anyway, I hope to learn more from you.
I'm like, feel free to check in.
Yeah.
You know, because I love the series so far.
Oh,
and I'm
really?
curious what will happen later.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm, trying my best. It's small potatoes, like I said. And I gotta say, because this is very obvious with my project, it's, I felt like it's a real failing of my project to, that I haven't had more people of color in it. But I totally understand, though, because being a weird white guy coming in and not being part of a community, people would be suspicious of me, especially with Matt Walsh's project that went on where he was tricking trans people into having interviews and whatever. So it's been difficult. And so I thank you so much, for being here, especially since my project so far has been so white. I mean, really, there's a few people of color, but it's been pretty white. So I really appreciate it. I really appreciate your perspective.
And I hope people give your project a chance.
Oh, thanks.
Because it's not Black led or POC led or whatever. Yeah. There's still truth and importance in every bit of it, and we need to learn from every source,
Yeah. Well, I figure this is what I can do. It's not much. I can't run, so I can't go to, protests and stuff.
This is important.
This is what I can do. And people can every person out there can find something that they can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe I can't bring a group together because I'm a little weird, but I can do these interviews. Anyway, thank you so much. I really want to hug you.
Yeah.
We're both like sweaty and horrible, but I'm going to hug you.
I'm so glad we did this.
Yeah, this is great. It's great. And I look forward to reading your book.
Shoot.
And taking your class and learning about the revolution that you're bringing. Yeah. So good night, y'all. From sweaty, hot Texas. Woo! Hey. All right. Soon I'll be in Oklahoma, and then I'll be home in Alaska, where it's still blizzardy. So I know. All right. Good night.